Besides that, their revival cooldown has increased from 40 seconds to 50 seconds, and they all have access to a new ability that lets them teleport to a location they have visited at least once before. With that laid out, they quickly fill in Keita on what is happening and teleport to Kahabel City to find more information about all these fancy words they read on the quest board. After reaching the city, they walk around and soon run into her. She looks relatively older but still beautiful and now has kids of her own. Hakak, an older guy, turns out to be the child she saved during the troll attack in the nearby village. It has been 15 long years in this world, so they decide to sit down with Kahabel to catch up on what happened while they were gone. She tells them that she lost her hand during a war with the Diok Kingdom, and after she got married and had kids, she decided to retire altogether as a knight. She informs them that Jiffin is the name of an island and tells them about a way to get there. She then spends the rest of the day with Yusuke and finally manages to tell him about her true feelings, parting ways with him with a sweet kiss. After finally getting kissed while being conscious, Yusuke walks out with the other heroes as they depart for Jiffin and wonders what all these quests were about. During their conversation, Keita also thanks him for saving his and his brother's lives and reveals that he is a middle school dropout who helped raise his younger brother by doing odd jobs. Some days later, they reach Jiffin Island and are greeted by two girls who introduce themselves as ritual dancers, Aoyu and Yana. They tell them that Jiffin and Buffo are special buffaloes found and bred on their island, and Bamania is the name of a special harvest festival. However, this year they won't be able to celebrate the festival because, 5 years ago, a band of orcs arrived on their island and started living in the impenetrable castle built by their ancestors 400 years ago. The orcs are man-eating monsters, and the islanders requested them to accept the Jiffin and Buffo as an alternate food source, but their numbers keep multiplying, and soon they will start eating people as well. With that in mind, they have decided to attack the orcs on the day of the festival when their leader, the Orc Queen, comes to receive the Buffo. They have hired many mercenaries from across the continent, and if they want the festival to happen, they must help them defeat the orcs. Meanwhile, someone overhears their conversation and goes to the Orc Queen to inform her. The next day, they go out to the shore and meet up with all the mercenaries and other combatants from the village. One of the important NPCs is a former general named Cantle, who has fought many battles against orcs before. They all form teams based on weapon types and expertise to train for the final battle, but Yusuke doesn't make it because you can't fight orcs with short-range weapons like a pan and a knife. Hakak, Isaki, and Yusuke also fail the test because they are just not up to snuff. Unlike them, Yusuke feels bad about not making it and goes off to grind some levels to get a good new role. He starts by asking the ritual dancers about other monsters on the island, but they tell him that there are none, as their ancestors destroyed all of them in the past. With that option out, he decides to gain XP by farming and cooking and eventually gets enough points to level up. The Game Master appears and spins the wheel for him, and this time he gets another super rare role as a blacksmith. At first, he feels sad about it, but then goes to the local blacksmith to become his apprentice and starts off by creating new weapons for his team that everyone can use. His first creation is called a store, which is a hammer and axe with a stake attached to it. Meanwhile, the orcs send one of their 15 mature males to check on the humans, and he gets turned into sashimi by Cantle and some other cool-looking NPCs. Shindo and Kei also watch from their gray screen. It turns out one of the mercenaries is an old inhabitant of the island named Fonza, who left the village when he was young and is now back to free it from the orcs' influence. With one orc down, there are 14 more giant orcs left to slay before the island will be set free, and they all start doubling down on their preparations for the big day. But one night, they get ambushed by the orcs, who send 3 of them at once to the shore. Everyone rushes towards the shore to fight the 3 orcs, and Cantle decides to show off some high-level skills. However, Yusuke arrives just in time to snatch the spotlight away from him by shooting down one of the orcs with his newly crafted power bow. After taking one down, the bow needs a lot of time to reload, and the orcs start walking towards Cieli to make canned food out of him. Just then, a young scout named Rice jumps out and starts running towards the orcs to grab their attention. Unfortunately, He ruins his moment by tripping and falling on the ground like an idiot. This turn of events works in their favor, as the orcs start chasing after Rice, giving Yusuke just enough time to shoot another stake from his launcher. With this, the orcs retreat, and the heroes and mercenaries decide to eliminate all the orcs that night. Yusuke hands the machine to Yusuke and Hakak, and they name it the Orc Eater. Yusuke joins Rice in trying to lure the orcs, successfully taking down the one behind Rice, allowing Yusuke to level up her new ranger job. The battle continues with the Orc Eater, and they manage to defeat the orc chasing Yusuke. The next morning, Yusuke attempts to solo an orc, but is quickly overpowered, and the orc starts creating mud balls to breach their defenses, opening a path into the village. More orcs follow, and it seems they will invade, but Rice heroically jumps in to attack one of the orcs. Unfortunately, he is quickly killed. Yusuke and Hakazaki make the most of his sacrifice, managing to defeat the other orcs, reducing their numbers to just a dozen, including the queen. After a while, Yusuke realizes the queen must be at the cave with the ritual dancers and villagers and decides to provide backup. Yusuke informs them they are out of bullets, but a villager mentions that the old blacksmith is still making ammunition. They head to the smithy, leaving the villagers to handle the incoming orcs. Meanwhile, Shindo and Kantle encounter the orc queen, who is heading towards a ship with children. She claims she agreed to peace and didn't kill any humans, but since the contract was breached and her children were taken, she intends to take human children in return. Shindo starts questioning their side, and Yusuke confirms that, objectively, they are the antagonists. Cieli and Shindo challenge the queen, using hit-and-run tactics. The queen counters with the hard-ignoring technique, heading towards the ship and throwing a projectile, which Shindo intercepts. The queen then uses Brain no Jutsu, throwing Shindo into the ocean. With one hero down, Cieli decides to go one-on-one against the orc queen. Shindo notices an impending tsunami. Meanwhile, Yusuke and the others reach the smithy and mourn their lost companions. They find the old blacksmith's stakes unsuitable for heroes, so they leave the gun with the villagers under Kei's supervision. Yusuke stays behind while Yusuke, Kei, Fonza, and others head to the Orc Palace. As they arrive, the island shakes violently, revealing the dormant volcano is erupting, spewing fireballs and lava, and causing a massive tsunami. The Keita is hit by a fireball, and Yusuke drags his body into the castle. The island splits apart, with people falling into lava, creating a hellish landscape. Aoyu is trapped in the cave with villagers as it collapses. As the end seems near, Yana inexplicably decides to sing a pop idol song. Meanwhile, Yusuke and Keita make it inside the castle, while Aoyu leads villagers through a secret tunnel connecting the cave to the old castle. Yusuke asks Aoyu about any structural weaknesses, intending to bring down the palace and eliminate the orcs. She emotionally explains that the palace is a historical and artistic monument with no weaknesses. Yusuke acknowledges this and continues inside, looking for a strategic location to fight the orcs. Meanwhile, outside the castle, a massive black-scaled dragon emerges from the volcano, clearly irritated about his nap being cut short. The dragon begins flying over the island, draining life energy from everyone on it. While he feasts, Yusuke and the others focus on eliminating the orcs inside the castle. Yusuke devises a plan to lure the orcs out through a narrow passage, so only one can exit at a time. This way, they can ambush them at the entrance and reduce their numbers until none are left. To execute this plan, they attempt to taunt the orcs, but they refuse to enter the narrow passage. Changing tactics, they use some villagers as bait and enter the passage themselves to ambush the orcs. The plan succeeds as they manage to take down one orc, but another follows and crushes Kei, leaving him legless. When the orc turns around, Yusuke notices a small female orc on its back. They realize the orcs are protecting her as their future queen. If she survives, the orcs will repopulate the island, making all their efforts futile. With this in mind, Yusuke concocts a scheme to use her as bait to lure the orcs to their deaths. Aoyu reveals she learned a bit of Orcish in her childhood and uses the phrase Dorobo, meaning, I have leg hair in Orcish.